Hi, good morning. This is Joyce, and we're talking about labor law and how it is affecting American labor. We got here in a very, very interesting way, going all the way back to FDR in 1935. There was a brief period in time, 12 years, when labor was truly ascendant. 1947, the Taft-Hartley law came into effect. Truman was so infuriated by this law that he would not sign off on it. He vetoed the law because what it did basically was destroy the rights of unions, giving employers more power, but more important than the employers, the corporations, was the power of the states. The states were now in a position to have right to work laws. Now, what does that mean? In New York State, if I'm a contractor and I want to do work in New York City, which I was, I had to be a union shop or pay the equivalent of union wages to any person who I employed to work in New York State because our laws are tailored to be pro union. Excuse me. Is every state like that? No, it isn't. That's why the unions never made any headway into the South. They were prevalent all over the country, not the South, because the Southern states decided they had right to work laws, and that superseded any union law. So, as we can see in many institutions that we want to uphold, whether it's voting rights, whether it's labor rights, whether it's universal minimum wages, all of this is now delegated to the states to be the place to go to have dedicated laws to that state. Part of the consequence of this is that right now, the federal government is releasing a one time labor minimum wage package for the transportation unions and workers. And what it's going to do is it's going to give everyone who works in transportation a $15 minimum wage. Why are they doing it? They're doing it because the airlines are complaining that they can't get any workers. Nobody wants to work anywhere in the country for less than $15 an hour. So a law is going into place federally that says all transportation workers must get $15 an hour. Why they didn't do this as a basic minimum wage across the country for everyone, I don't know. But piecemeal law is what we get. And when we look at the NLRB and we look at their website and we see all the laws, seems to me that a lot of law is on the books. It protects child labor. It protects migrant workers. It protects immigrants who are here for seasonal work. And it goes on and on, minors, etc., etc. But what's really happening? I mean, this is a very glossy document going up through about 2014. What's really going on? In 1947, we had the Taft-Hartley law. This is the law that Truman vetoed because he said it would make slaves of labor. And what it did is it curtailed their right to bargain. Says, and it also said that if you didn't want to become a member of the union, and there was a union there, you didn't have to become one. And so people were entitled to join the union, not be part of the union. And of course, this was all good for the corporate good and the corporations. It set out to protect employees' rights from unfair union practices. True, there were a couple of unions in the 50s that were dealing in illegal practices, which is where something very famous came into being, the RICO law, which is for racketeering. And those people were uh, dismissed and jailed with cause when it happened. So certainly this was not the overriding reason to put Taft-Hartley into effect. No siree. The overriding reason was to give employers more control over what was happening on the union floor, and also kind of separate out union management from the union worker. By doing that, they actually caused a two-class system within the union, and it's like everything else. If you're not eating from the same pie, you don't feel the same effects. So we go on with that law, and it continues, and it says if you strike, you have to give management 90 days notice that you're going to strike. And if you're on strike for more than 80 days, the NLRB is able to come in and adjudicate that strike and stop it. It further gave employers the right to demand that if I was in one union and one corporation, another corporation that was similar to mine could not join the strike as well. And then again, it gave right to work laws to the states. So when the states all say, we don't want federal government is bad, the exact opposite is really true. When you've got a law from the federal government, that means everyone's got to follow the law. When you've got a law from the federal government that can be superseded by the states, that means you already have downgraded that law. Because as we've seen with expanded Medicaid, with infrastructure programs, with the national grids, and with so many other projects, if it's not the priority of the state, and labor certainly isn't, you're not going to get a decent wage or be allowed to unionize. This law, the Taft-Hartley law, was eventually amended to something called the Labor Management and Reporting Act of 1959. This was supposed to keep unions honest and make sure that they reported exactly what they collected from their employees, and it was open to scrutiny by the corporations. Which brings us to, how did the corporations become so powerful? I couldn't find other labor laws on the books that explained what's happening today, the lack of OSHA in many of our shops. When you look at Amazon's accident rate of 6.6 people per every 100, that is an incredibly high rate of accidents in their warehouses. Retail is barely better. They're at 3.3 people being injured per 100. When I ran my own business, I ran a 0.6% of one. It would have been less, except 10 years earlier, somebody who worked for me had not really an accident, but because of the skills employed in carpeting and flooring, had injured his knees and back and submitted a claim. As far as I was concerned, that was fine with me. He was really unable to work because of the demands of the job. So, yeah, that's legitimate. 6.6 people being injured on a job, that's unconscionable. So, what it means is when we look further at a lot of the laws for labor, we see that in 2001 through 2009, Elaine Chao, the wife of Mitch McConnell, becomes George W. Bush's Secretary of Labor. In that job, I couldn't see that she changed any laws, but what she did, since the NLRB is the adjudicator and the arbitrator of disputes for labor and management, what she did is she never reported any of those disputes. Not only that, she decreased the budget for the NLRB. So if anyone asked her what was happening in terms of labor, labor was perfect. You know, labor had no problems during that 8-9 year period when she was head of the board. She may have passed one or two bills. They were of no consequence to the damage that she did to union and other labor in America. So non-enforcement of rules became a way of life for labor. When I was working again, and I did work in New York City, my mechanics had to go to an OSHA school. That's Occupational Safety and Health. They had to learn proper training so that they would not get hurt on the job. And I, as a corporation, had to have $5 million in bonding in case anyone got hurt on the job. Does that exist today? I don't know, because we do not see OSHA in any of these environments, say at Amazon or other warehouses. And the accident rates are sky high. And Amazon's beginning to wonder, why is their turnover rate 150%? Really, who wants to work there when your life is literally on the line? So fast forward to two things that I'd like to bring to your attention before I close out this webinar. One, since I'm kind of frustrated by the law and I see what's happening, I'd like to know myself exactly how we got here, where we've got waivers being given to special industries, claiming hardship for those industries when really it's the labor that should be claiming the hardship. And it's the labor who's not getting overtime pay for working in hazard conditions, nor are they being provided with bathroom facilities if they're working outside, with a fire on their backs as they're picking crops, or with water. This to me sounds like it is a perfect class action lawsuit. Don't have to go through the NLRB board, because I think what's happening to labor across the country, whether it's Uber, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Lyft, whether it's Southwestern Airlines, there is the latest Supreme Court decision for Southwest Airlines baggage handlers. They've got a union. They did not want to go to arbitration. They were entitled to overtime pay, to benefits, and to breaks. Southwest said they're not. They have to go to arbitration, and that's the only way the case would be settled. The union took this to the first court, where it was overturned in the corporation's favor. The second court took it to appeals, and from appeals, it went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court stated that baggage handlers are involved in interstate commerce. Because they're involved in interstate commerce, they're entitled to their overtime pay. They're entitled to their benefits, and they can sue the corporation. Not just one person, but all of them can sue in a class action lawsuit. So I think for everyone who's involved in interstate commerce, whether it's retailers, whether it's Uber, whether it's Lyft, whether it's warehousing, whether it's transportation, there are a lot of people who will fall under this new ruling from the Supreme Court. It just came out in this month in 2022. So, because I am looking at the laws and I know and I read what's happening, and I know that the AFL-CIO has joined with many other unions, teachers, retailers, aerospace, you name it, they all want to get more than 1 million people onto the union rolls. Some folks have said, "Hey, that's not that's an achievable goal. We'd like to see an aspirational goal." My feeling is, let's go with what's achievable, and if we get more, then we'll be happy. Because the rule of law, and it looks like whoever gets into the Department of Labor has tremendous power over the rules that govern labor law today. Everybody who's come into the Department of Labor, the Department of Transportation, has left their mark on society. Well, if you can leave a bad mark on society, it seems to me we should be able to leave a good mark on society that gives labor an equal opportunity to do well in America. So right now, I am calling attorneys, speakers bureaus who have attorneys, trying to contact lawyers who were involved in the history of labor, lawyers who were involved in present day cases and can bring us more knowledge on what's happening in labor today. And where do we go from here? We have to go with the rule of law. We could strike. That's what they're doing in Israel and the UK and other nations. That's true. And force the issue when people are considering our plight. But the rule of law is what we want changed, and we want it codified to give labor a clean slate. And we don't have 50 years to do it like the Powell Memorandum had. And I'll discuss the Powell Memorandum and other laws that are taking place right now to give special sectors of the nation's labor more power. What we need is we need everyone to be raised up. Union is the way to do it. Certainly works in France. 98% are unionized in France. It's working in Germany. It's not working as well in England. And over here in America, the most unequal economically and socially of all the Western nations, labor is really treated pretty abominably. That's got to change. Labor is what makes business run. And to run it effectively, we need good laws. So thank you for listening. Tune in next Thursday when we continue. And I'll be happy to pursue the symposium on labor. And maybe we can get a hell of a lot more transparency and a little more light on the plight of labor today. Remember, this didn't happen overnight. It took 50 years, but we're just seeing it and feeling it since the end of the 80s. So take care, everyone. See you next week. Thank you for listening. Tune in for my YouTubes on Tuesday, their political action and what's happening in our world and what's current and what affects me and I think affects you. And follow me on Twitter at Grandma J. Silver, and you'll get the latest news that I think is important. And if you want to add comments, instant message me or go to TheVoiceOfJoyce at earthlink.net. Have a great day, everyone, and take care. See you next week. Bye now.